Welcome to Concentric Educational Solutions podcast, one door at a time, where we speak about the intersection of politics and education and just putting the students and the community at the center of everything that we do. So we're in the middle of season 3, and it's the political season, and we've been having guests, city council people from across Baltimore City, and then going into the mayoral run in the primary in May. But we've had a couple opportunities to have really key guests on the cast. The most recent episode is with Anthony Morris, Executive Director of Concentric Educational Solutions, really speaking about the work that we're doing about therapeutic mentoring and tutoring. But today, and we just bookended coming off of Black History Month, I want to have an opportunity to really speak in the honor and the privilege to speak to our new Chief of Research, Dr. Ivory Toldson. Dr. Toldson is a full professor at Howard University. His accolades and career accomplishments, it goes on. And we had the tremendous opportunity to bring him on and help further the work that we're trying to do for students and families. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Toldson. Thank you for the belief, for joining. And let's jump right in.
Yeah.
Tell everybody who doesn't know you, which is probably 0% of the population, a little bit about your background and kind of what got you into education.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ivory Toldson. I'm currently a professor at Howard University, the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Negro Education, which is a historic journal that was started in 1933 at Howard University, continuously published since then. I spent about 2.5 years as the Director of Education, Innovation, and Research, National Director of Education and Research for the NAACP. And I also worked with the Obama administration for 3 years and spent about 5 years as the president of the QEM Network, which is a nonprofit organization that advances STEM education for underrepresented minorities.
Okay.
But I've been at Howard University since 2005. So that's
you coming up on 20 years already?
Yeah, almost 20 years. Yeah, so that's been kind of my anchor position. But I've gotten a chance to do some other amazing things in the interim. I also have a book called No BS, BS for Bad Stats. The subtitle is Black People Need People Who Believe in Black People Enough Not to Believe Every Bad Thing They Hear About Black People.
Okay.
And you know, I publish quite a bit, but you know, research is my passion. So you know, to have an opportunity to serve as Chief of Research, and this is the first time I served as Chief of Research. But it was important to me to work for a Black-owned company, and not just Black-owned by title, but Black-owned in mission.
Appreciate that.
And some organization or institution that I know has a potential capacity to really bring the Black community to another level.
So go to your roots. Tell us where you're from. What are some of the early childhood experiences that kind of shaped Ivory? Yeah. Because, you know, as we were talking before, it's powerful. You know, your middle name is Achebe.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, talk about those formative years and how they really go into your core right now.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay.
My mother owned a daycare center called ISED, Institute for Social and Educational Development. It started out as a small daycare center where myself and my first friend, Myron Jones, were the only students there. Okay. Home-based. And she kept adding on to the home, and at its peak, it accommodated 66 children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is and in a working class neighborhood. You know, so we had the largest house. I mean, it was expansive, but it was in on a very humble block. But it served as a resource to the entire community. She, in addition to having the daycare center, and the daycare center was a African-centered daycare center. She didn't call it that, but you know, for the time, and this is the mid '70s through through to the '90s. She was teaching in a way, or she drove a curriculum that was all about Black children loving themselves, you know, so all the images were Black.
So as you're going through that experience, particularly in childhood, now you're going into your adolescence, how did that help shape a really positive self identity and being rooted in the power, just being as we call it, Black excellence, and understanding the power in that.
Yeah. Well, it was so important because, as you know, Black parents have to fight against all of the social messages that children receive. You know, if you have your television on, then your Black child, are seeing images and getting messages that can be damaging to their psyche. So Black parents and Black institutions are always fighting against this larger system. So to have a parent that was dedicated to that, it helped me to understand the potential in Black people. And I think that's why I probably think about my career differently than a lot of others, because unfortunately, a lot of Black people, they feel like in order to be successful, at some point they have to work for an institution or go through institutions that weren't built for us.
Absolutely.
I've never felt that way, and I've had a career that I'm proud of. But my career has been very Black. I've been a professor at two historically Black universities. I've worked with the most prominent Black civil rights organization.
Yes.
I was president of a Black-owned nonprofit. And I even worked for a president of the United States who happened to be Black.
Yeah.
so
So you're going through that. You go to take us to undergrad. So undergrad is a little bit different because you're at a PWI.
I did go to LSU. Yeah.
Well, what was the thought about going to PWI? Probably the largest, obviously, in the state. One of the largest.
Yeah.
Like, what were some of the memories or experiences there that kind of even solidify where you are as a person today?
Yeah. Well, I graduated from a school called Estruma High School, which is a predominantly Black school. If you look at the great school rankings, I think it's a 1 out of 10. Had a lot of social, had a lot of social issues there. Especially my sophomore year, there was a stabbing that resulted in somebody's death that happened. There were 2 shootings in 1 year, open drug use, and then we had a principal that came and cleaned up a lot of the behavioral problems. But a lot of the academic problems persisted. So that's the kind of high school I went to. I never imagined I would go anywhere other than Southern University. Because that's where my mother went, that's where my father went, that's where my sister went. So I was prepared to go to Southern University, and despite the fact that my school was having all those challenges, I personally enjoyed being there. I liked the students there, and there were some people at the school that really looked out for me. But there was I was selected to host a visitor. And the visitor was Dean Carolyn Collins, who was the dean of the junior division at LSU. So when she came to my campus, I was the one that showed her around, and she took a liking to me and encouraged me to apply to LSU. And then around the same time, my mother found information for this bridge program at LSU that would give me credits and get me involved with some of the things early. So my original plan, honestly, was to go to LSU for that summer and then transfer to Southern because I could get those free credits there. But once I got into that bridge program, I met every Black person to meet during that summer. I came in with all of these Black students, so the summer looked a whole lot different than the fall. But the bridge program did what it was supposed to do. It got me there. Now that being said, there were a lot of challenges I had with the professors at LSU. With some of the other students, I did experience some racism. Even though I had my own friend group, I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha, and we had all of the Divine Nine there. But there were times when I felt like LSU was not a place that I was supposed to be.
So your undergrad is in what?
In psychology.
What made you go into psych? Like,
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah.
definitely interested. What made you go into psych? Because it
Yeah.
kind of traveled you with you your whole career.
Right. And I also want to say this about my experience at LSU. I was able to cross register at Southern University while I
Oh, you
was
took
at.
some classes there.
I took 20 credits at Southern.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
I got at least one. I took at least one class at Southern every year I was at LSU. So that gave me just
Just
enough
enough
of
to
that.
get through.
Yeah. So I majored in psychology. My father's a psychologist. Now it's not quite that simple because my father and mother split up when I was very young.
Okay.
So I didn't grow up in the same home with my father. My father did his best connecting to his first set of kids,
Okay.
even though he had a second family that where I felt when I was a child got most of his attention.
Okay.
I didn't go to school. I didn't go to LSU intending to major in psychology. In fact, my first major was journalism. And
I'm connecting the dots now.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was journalism, and that's because I was very active in my high school newspaper. But once I got to LSU, some of these mentors that I met, like Dean Carolyn Collins, some of the other people who worked in student affairs, they were telling me the pathway to institutional leadership, like they were. And they said that psychology was a good major to go in that field, and that you can get a master's in college student personnel or student affairs or
So they
things
were
like
talking
that.
about postgraduate, graduate degree, even doing undergrad.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And and then around the same time, I was getting closer to my father.
Okay.
Even though I didn't feel like my father was very present in my life when I was younger, when I went to college, he was a lot more active than he was, and he gave me a job in his psychology practice, and really took it upon himself to try to mentor me and groom me, and help me to feel the benefits of some of his success.
Did you feel that connection growing then during that time? Between you and your
Yeah,
father. Okay.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't like
Yeah.
and then I also have a stepfather, and he's passed away, but he came into my life my high school year. Imari Obadeli, he was the president of the Republic of New Africa, and so during those years, I felt closer to my stepfather than my father. And then by the time I got to college, I really felt like I had two fathers.
So that's a powerful fact. The influence of your stepfather, because that's nothing that's monumental. Like what your stepfather was able to accomplish, and the foundation, and then you have the merging of the two.
Yeah.
So now you're an undergrad, and you're thinking about going to grad school for psychology. What's the passion that fueled you? What was it to really understand and further Black psychology, or because I remember in undergrad, the people that I was studying, like what is the connection like to okay, I'm going to graduate, and was it instantaneously okay, I'm going to go grad school in psych, and then
Yeah, it was a practical decision.
okay,
There wasn't anything that I knew I could do with a bachelor's in psychology. I felt like I had to get something.
yes,
At the point where I was graduating, I had some experience working in my father's office, and knew that if I got a PhD in clinical or counseling psychology, I can continue to work with him, and that would be a decent career path. I also had some experiences with student affairs because of my mentors at LSU. So when I I did an internship at Penn State while I was undergrad, and it was a college. It was a student affairs related internship. So I made the decision to get a master's degree in counselor education with a concentration in college student personnel.
okay,
And I knew that with that master's degree, I could either go on to get a PhD in counseling or clinical psychology, or I could go into student affairs, or maybe get a PhD in that, or go straight into the profession. Okay. So I went to Penn State for that.
So now you go through Penn State. Mm-hmm. Now you're thinking about the terminal degree, getting the PhD. What led you to Temple?
Yeah,
because this is while I passed and not cross. Like Temple becomes at that time, it becomes this early Mecca, particularly in the north, with Malefe going there, and just one of our visiting professors was there right before I was there. Was Bobby Seale, Amiri Baraka had come through. Like, what led you to Temple?
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of any of that.
Okay.
But as I was looking for PhD programs, there was a professor at Penn State who I worked closely with, and she had a friend who was in the counseling psychology program at Temple. She told her friend about me, and Temple had 3 Black counseling psychology faculty members, which was a lot for PhD programs that were AP accredited. So it was Dr. Madonna Constantine. She was the one that recruited me to Temple. I also got into University of Houston, which is close to my hometown. So I was thinking about going there just so I could be closer to home. But I got more resources to go to school at Temple.
Okay. What are some things that you really learned at Temple that start going into your profession?
Yeah. So in Temple, I worked wraparound. So I did behavior specialist consultation, in-house psychological evaluations, and mobile therapy.
Okay. Was that like TSS around that time?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had TSS who were working for me.
Yeah. Okay. You were supervised.
Yeah. So I would, the behavior specialist writes the behavioral plan that TSS workers follow. Okay. So I was a behavior specialist while I was in graduate school. So that was probably the first time I understood the power of a home visit. Because I was going to all of these homes and doing the in-house psychological evaluations.
Yes.
I was going to about 5 different homes every week.
To do the assessment.
To do the assessments. Because they weren't coming to our office. I was going into their homes. I was sitting down at their kitchen tables with their families, asking the questions, and learning not just from what they're saying, but also my observations around.
So now you finished Temple, and here's what's interesting. Going through each of the steps. So getting a bachelor's, getting a PhD is revolutionary in a sense, right? Just the grind and the tenacity to go forward. So now you graduate, you've gone into your career. Yeah, it takes you to Southern, correct?
Yeah. Well, first to the United States Penitentiary in Atlanta.
Talk about that. Like, what did you see?
I did my pre-doctoral internship there.
What are some of the things that you saw in the pen that stuck with you?
I saw some Black revolutionaries from the 70s, and I saw a whole lot of casualties of the war on drugs.
Because Atlanta, it's a Fed.
Yeah.
So they're doing Fed time.
Yeah. So I worked with Matula Shakur, and he passed away recently.
Yes.
But yeah, I did regular work with him while I was there, and then there was a lot of people were there who were around my age, and they got caught up in the war on drugs. And I think that was the first time it really hit home to me that so many of us had been legislated into prison.
Because right around there, so you're doing your postdoc in prison. What years?
This is 2000 2001.
Right. So when I was doing my time, it was in the early mid 90s, 92, 93.
Yeah.
And we had just come out of Syntac into truth in sentencing, and I was one of some of the very first people who actually got sentenced under TIS, truth in sentencing, as opposed to syntax. So syntax, you were doing maybe 75% of your time getting parole. Truth in sentence, TIS was no parole. You're doing 85 to 90% of your time. So very impactful. I wasn't around necessarily famous Black revolutionaries, but around people who had been through it.
Yeah.
So now you're going back. You're coming out of the Fed. You're going into higher ed. What would you say grounds your professional ideology? Like, what is your professional ideology around the work that you do?
Yeah. So my professional ideology is working from a sense of compassion. Really understanding the perspective of the people you're working to help. So there's a lot of people who are, because I'm in a helping profession.
Yes.
So I have a counseling psychology degree, and most of my work is in education. There's a lot of people who try to serve people who have the perception of being underserved, are marginalized, and they don't include those voices. They feel like they know what's best for them. So being able to invite people you're helping into the conversation and having them be co-creators of what's best is very important. It's also important to understand the strengths that's coming from the communities that you want to serve.
Okay.
Because there's no solution that I can give with all the degrees I have and all the research I've done. There's no solution that I can give that will be greater than a solution that can come from someone who actually lived in that environment and came out okay.
Wow.
So when I started doing Black male achievement research, I didn't go into it looking at Black boys who were in trouble. I went into it looking at Black boys who were successful first. Because
as opposed to a deficit model.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a base.
Because, ultimately we want to help the ones that's in trouble. But what we try to do is look at the ones that's in trouble and then go to our laboratories for a solution.
Facts.
That's not what you do. You go to their world for a solution. They may not have the solution, but their brother has the solution, or their neighbor has the solution, or somebody in the neighborhood has.
Because there's some work around the resiliency theory, right? So, kind of leave off on this question. You've been in this field for so long. You've accomplished so much. You're respected across so many different genres, around so many different disciplines. I know why I'm excited, but why did you how did this come about? Because it happened within 2 weeks of us having a conversation. Why Concentric? You literally could have taken your talents anywhere. It's almost like LeBron, right? You could have taken his talents to South Beach. Why Concentric?
Yeah. I don't know. Why not?
Yeah.
It's I'm not sure why not. So I've never really cared much about so what I do is more important than who I am, right?
Wow.
So some people, they want to be something, they want to be a president or be a CEO or, all those types of things. What matters more to me is what I do.
Thanks.
And so I want to make a certain type of contribution. And, my impact is going to be impactful no matter what perch I'm at.
Absolutely.
And so, with Concentric, I saw an opportunity to have a leadership position doing something that is very important to me with the organization that has a lot of potential to make a big impact. So, if there's a choice to go to Concentric or Princeton Review, let's just throw that out there.
Yeah, facts. Absolutely.
So from my standpoint, it would be an easy decision to go to Concentric, even though some people would say, oh my God, like that's but I don't really, I'm not moved by what they do. I'm not moved by the product.
And what you're doing, Ivory, and what you have done is revolutionary. And one of the things that when we talked initially, just several weeks ago, and I took it back to my team, I'm like, Dr. Toldson wants to come on board, and I knew what it meant because of what Concentric is founded in, Afrocentricity, and what it could mean for students and families across the country, particularly students, Black and brown students, students and families. And so the way that I see it, and I just thank you, that it's a tremendous responsibility that you have the belief in what we're doing. I mean, it's like literally, I text myself so that I can remember. It's almost like when Pac and Snoop got together and did Two America's Most Wanted. Like, we are going to revolutionize public education for Black and brown students unapologetically. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to learning from you. Thank you, and I'm humbled by the opportunity of the greatness that we're gonna do, man. And it's just it's just powerful, man. I just want to thank you. Welcome aboard. I mean, we're gonna do some crazy stuff, man. We're gonna do some crazy stuff in the interest of students and families that we serve.
Yeah,
right?
Same here.
Just let's do it. As always, you can catch us at concentric.world with all of our social media platform. We really look forward to the next steps and just all the tremendous work that we're going to do. Shout out to our sponsor, the Atlas Group. You can catch them 34 locations all across the greater Maryland area and in across the United States. And we just want to thank you. Look forward to joining you next time. I'm your host, David Heiber, CEO of Concentric.